Right friends, welcome back to News Analysis and Features for week 29, that is from 13th July to 19th July. We are going to discuss 4 items here. First one is an insight into Greece crisis. Second one is a fall in gold prices. Do people move away from gold? Next one is Japan moving away from self-defense doctrine to collective self-defense doctrine. And the last one is what is OneWeb. Right friends, look into the first one, an insight into Greece crisis. Before going into the details of Greece crisis, I would like to explain the history behind the formation of European Union. This week, 2 important developments took place. One is Greece crisis was solved to some extent. The second one is Iran nuclear crisis, or otherwise Iran nuclear agreement was formalized, and these 2 things are important features. Iran nuclear agreement we are going to discuss during the 30th week news analysis and features, and for this week we are concentrating on Greece crisis. Right? All of you are well aware, in the year 1945, Second World War ended. Subsequently, fearing aggression by Germany, some defense treaties, or you can say mutual agreements for defense cooperation, were signed subsequently, and one such agreement was 1948 Treaty of Brussels. I am not listing those agreements here. Immediately after the Second World War, the immediate concern was aggression by Germany. Right? In anticipation of aggression of Germany, some defense treaties were signed. Treaty of Brussels of 1948 was one such treaty. Leaving that, let us come to 1950s. Subsequently, unification of Germany in economic terms started from 1950s. First such agreement you can say is the Treaty of Paris of 1951. Based on Treaty of Paris 1951, European Coal and Steel Community was formed in 1952. Subsequently, Treaty of Rome. Treaty of Rome was signed in 1957. Based on Treaty of Rome, this European Economic Community was formed in the year 1958. In the year 1993, Maastricht Treaty is important treaty based on which European Union was formalized. European Union was formalized in 1993 based on Maastricht Treaty, and in the year 1999, common currency euro was introduced, and coins and notes of euro came into physical circulation from 2002. And in the year 2009, another important agreement, which is popularly known as Lisbon Treaty, came into existence. I would like to clarify, Lisbon Treaty was signed in 2007 and the European Union came into existence in 2009. This Lisbon Treaty modified Maastricht Treaty as well as Treaty of Rome. By modifying Treaty of Rome, which introduced European Economic Community, as well as Maastricht Treaty, which formalized European Union, modified European Union or European Union in new form was formed based on Lisbon Treaty, and European Union in the present form came into existence in 2009, and euro, the common currency, physical circulation of coins as well as notes came into existence from 2002. So these 2 things please don't forget, right? Common currency came into existence. Look into this, there are 28 countries at present in European Union, 28 countries, and 19 countries are following common currency euro. 19 countries are following common currency euro, right? Please look into this, these 28 are European Union member countries, and if you look at the disparities, please look into this slide. There is a disparity in per capita GNI. If you look at Germany, its per capita gross national income is around $48,000, whereas Greece and Portugal are around $20,000. I am talking about per capita gross national income. Per capita gross national income for Germany is around close to $50,000, whereas for Greece and Portugal it is around $20,000. Not only that, Germany is known for precision engineering. There are variations in the labor productivity across the region. There is a wide variation in discipline and work culture across the nations. And standards of corporate governance is different from country to country. And government regulation is also different from country to country, right? Under these circumstances, common currency was introduced. What happened subsequent to the introduction of common currency? Countries like Greece and Spain have got access to cheap credit. Countries like Greece as well as Spain got access to cheap credit. If you are borrowing money, it is prudent on your part to invest in productive assets. Common sense suggests if you are borrowing money, it is prudent on your part to spend on producing assets, develop infrastructure, develop roads, develop industries. But what happened is, some countries borrowed money and spent on consumption expenditure. If you have income of 10 lakh rupees per annum, if you purchase some house, if you purchase some land, that is productive expenditure. If you have 10 lakhs of income per annum, you are spending lavishly by going to hotels, by traveling across the world, that is consumption expenditure. Consumption expenditure will not give you ultimate returns in the long run. But what these countries did was spent heavily on consumption expenditure, because of which these countries suffered badly, and in the 2008 financial crisis, countries like Greece economy collapsed in the economic crisis of 2008. For example, just look at these figures of India and Greece. Our economy size is $2 trillion. You can say $2,000 billion. $2 trillion is $2,000 billion. And our external debt is around $460 billion. I am taking rough figures. They may not be exact figures, but for the sake of explanation, I have taken rough figures. India's economy is $2,000 billion roughly, and our external debt is $460 billion, and debt to GDP ratio is 23% for us. But if you look at Greece, GDP is around $240 billion, and their external debt is $400 billion, or you can say 360 billion euro. I convert it into dollars. Their external debt is around $400 billion. That means debt to GDP ratio is around 160%. Some newspapers say that it is 180%. So, debt to GDP ratio is very high. That means their external debt is almost 1.5 times their annual GDP. That means they borrowed money and spent it lavishly. Right? Under these circumstances, what happened during the past 6 years? During the past 6 to 7 years from 2008, lenders, especially European Central Bank, International Monetary Fund and European Commission, they gave 2 bailout packages to bring Greece out of debt trap. They gave 2 bailout packages during the past 6 to 7 years to bring Greece out of debt trap. And they imposed several conditions. They imposed several restrictions, what are known as popularly austerity measures. Several austerity measures were imposed during the past 6-7 years, because of which the economy collapsed. The economy shrunk by 25% during the past 4 to 5 years. Unemployment rate reached 25%. Under these circumstances, elections were held in the month of January 2015. And in those elections, anti-austerity party, which is known as Syriza party, anti-austerity party known as Syriza party, led by Alexis Tsipras, came to power. His main plank is anti-austerity. Let us not agree for austerity measures. Right? They came to power. During the past 6-7 years, economy collapsed. And now the time came for third bailout package. For giving third bailout package, the lenders, European Central Bank, International Monetary Fund, as well as European Commission specified several conditions. And Greece has gone for referendum. And 61% of people said, no, let us not accept for these terms and conditions. And finally, 17 hours of marathon discussions were held, and subsequently Greece has to agree for several conditions for bailing them out for third time by giving more money. How much money is involved? These things we learnt in the lecture part, and let us look at the conditions imposed by them. First is reform of the banking system. Second is increasing tax revenue, VAT already raised from 13% to 23%. Overhaul of the judicial system, speeding up the court cases. The court cases are to be speeded up. Raising taxes for farmers also. Phasing out early retirements. Retirement age is to be increased, which may lead to further unemployment. Privatizing assets to pull up 50 billion euro. These are the conditions imposed by the international lenders for giving third bailout package, and Greece is forced to accept these conditions. And under these circumstances, an agreement was reached. Greece will implement these austerity measures, and international lenders will give some money to bring Greece out of debt trap. And let us see what will happen in future, whether these austerity measures will further cripple Greece economy, which has already been crippled because of the austerity measures during the past 6-7 years. Only time can say, will Greece come out of debt trap, or these restrictions, these conditions will further cripple Greece economy. Only time can say. This is all about Greece crisis. Right, friends? After knowing about Greece crisis, let us look at the favorite of Indians, gold. Fall in gold prices. Do people move away from gold? I would like to tell you a few things. Indian households are holding gold somewhere around 20,000 tons to 40,000 tons. One estimates say Indians are holding 20,000 tons of gold. Other estimates say 40,000 tons of gold. Our cultural affinity to gold is very high from the times immemorial. From the times immemorial, our cultural affinity to gold is very high. We hold around 20,000 to 40,000 tons of gold, and every year we are consuming around 800 to 1,000 tons of gold. Our gold consumption is every year 800 to 1,000 tons, and we compete with China for consumption of gold. We may not compete with China in other aspects, but in the aspect of consumption of gold, we compete with China. China is also consuming around 800 to 1,000 tons of gold every year, and we produce very little gold. All of you are well aware, and most of the gold is imported. Because of import of gold, during the last year, our import bill was around $34 billion. Previously, our import bill almost went up to $50 billion only for gold, because we have to import most of the gold, and during the first 3 months of this year, our import bill is $7.5 billion only because of gold. But now the situation is changing, because international gold prices came down to 5-year low. International gold prices came down to 5-year low. That is the first and the foremost thing. Second important aspect is, in India also, gold prices fell by 24% during the past 2 years. And internationally, gold price came to less than $1,100 per troy ounce. You may ask, what is a troy ounce? 1 troy ounce is 31.1 grams. And in India also, gold prices reduced by 24% during the past 2 years. And under these circumstances, let us analyze whether people will move away from gold. First and the foremost is fall in inflation. Hence, gold no more required as a hedge. What is hedge? If inflation is 8%, if gold rate is increasing by 10% per annum, if inflation is 8%, if gold price is increasing 10% per annum, that means the rate increase in gold is more than inflation, that means it is acting as a hedge against inflation. If I invest in gold, if gold price is increasing 10% per annum and the inflation is 8%, then I can say I purchased gold to act as a hedge against inflation. But you see, now the inflation reduced. Inflation, consumer price index inflation is around 5 to 6%. But price of gold is reducing. Hence, there is no question of taking it as hedge. Price of gold is reducing for the past 2 years. Hence, it may not act as hedge against inflation because of two reasons. Inflation came down to 5 to 6% now. Second important aspect is gold price is reducing instead of increase. Second important aspect is center's steps on black money. Center has taken several steps. In future, if you are purchasing gold more than 1 lakh value, you require PAN number. Because of the center's steps on black money, there is every possibility people may invest in other instruments. Third thing is fall in gold prices. We have already discussed. During the past 2 years, 24% reduction. Fourth is alternate instruments. There is lot of awareness nowadays because of multimedia channels. There is lot of awareness about equities, debentures, small savings, mutual funds. So, there is every possibility people may invest in other financial instruments. Next important aspect is people are migrating to urban areas. People are more worried about their house, their pensions. This is another aspect. And the last aspect is youth are inclined towards more consumption expenditure like travel, hospitality, technology gadgets. Hence, their propensity to purchase gold is reducing day by day. And these factors I listed, and my point is the purchase of gold in future may come down because of these reasons, but you have to look into the cultural affinity of Indians with regard to gold. Only time can say whether the real economics will prevail or cultural affinity will prevail. Right, friends? Look into the next one. Japan is moving away from self-defense doctrine to collective self-defense doctrine. What is self-defense doctrine? For the past 7 decades, Japan maintained self-defense doctrine. It is not interfering into anybody else's affairs. Its defense forces are not interfering into the activities of other countries. That is self-defense doctrine. They are not making any alliance with other defenses. They are not making any alliance with defense forces of other countries or allies. But now it is moving away from that doctrine to collective self-defense doctrine. Collective self-defense doctrine. That means the defense forces of Japan will now involve with the defense forces of its allies or friendly countries. Defense forces of Japan will now align with the defense forces of its friendly countries or otherwise known as allies, and Japan and the United States of America signed an agreement for this collective self-defense doctrine when Shinzo Abe agreed United States of America. In the month of April 2015, it was decided that Japan forces will participate in the forces of allies. That means Japan is systematically moving from self-defense doctrine to collective self-defense doctrine. This is one important point. And what are the reasons, you may ask? I listed out 3 points. One is Japan's dispute with China on territorial waters of East China Sea. All of you are well aware, in East China Sea there is a dispute with regard to Senkaku Islands. China has got territorial disputes with Japan with regard to Senkaku Islands in East China Sea, and at the same time China has got territorial dispute with several countries including Vietnam as well as Philippines in South China Sea, especially Spratleys Islands. You can look into this picture. With regard to Spratleys Islands, China has got lot of disputes with its neighboring countries, and under these circumstances, the visit of General Secretary of Communist Party of Vietnam to the United States of America recently assumed significance. Right friends? So here, because of these points, this Japan is moving away from its self-defense doctrine to collective self-defense doctrine. That means it may have an alliance with friendly countries like United States of America, Australia. In fact, Japanese Prime Minister recently stated that 4 democracies of the world can form strategic diamond. These 4 countries, Japan, America, India and Australia. And here interesting point is, because of these actions, how do you infer this? On one side there is territorial dispute of China with Japan with regard to Senkaku Islands. Dispute of China with Vietnam as well as Philippines and some other countries with regard to Spratlys Islands. And China is planning to expand its economic might through Silk Road project as well as Maritime Silk Road project. And under these circumstances, how do you infer this? Is it a strategic ploy of United States of America to bring distraught neighbors of China to its fold militarily or economically? This is one aspect. Second aspect is, because of these developments, does it lead to escalation of tensions, especially in East Asia, Pacific region of East Asia? Because the United States of America is entering into Japan, and that may lead to escalation of tensions, especially in East Asia, especially in the Pacific region of East Asia. Third thing is, whether Japan is caught in the crossfire between United States of America and China, only time can say. The attempt of Japan to move away from self-defense doctrine to collective self-defense doctrine, whether it will lead to tensions or whether Japan is in the crossfire between United States of America and China, only time can say. Right friends? Before concluding this, for a few minutes, let us look at OneWeb. What is OneWeb? It is the constellation of around 700 satellites. 700 satellites moving around the Earth at a low Earth orbit of around 800 to 1200 kilometers, and these satellites will operate in Ku band. I can tell you what is Ku band. Ku band is microwave frequencies for satellite communication, and these satellites will operate at a height of around 800 to 1200 kilometers in low Earth orbit. Around 700 satellites will be launched, and because of this, anywhere internet can be given at affordable cost. Anywhere, anytime, internet can be given, high-speed broadband internet can be given with this 700 constellation of satellites, and this program is going to be commissioned by 2019. And for these satellites, OneWeb is partnering with Arianespace. Arianespace is the company of France. For launching these satellites, it is having tie-up with Arianespace, and at the same time, for the manufacture of these satellites, recently it had an agreement with Airbus. Airbus is the group from Europe, and at the same time, recently they got funding of $500 million, and Bharti Enterprises of India also committed some minority stake in this $500 million, and if everything goes well, this 700 satellites in the low Earth orbit can give internet across the world, and a remote area across the world can have access to internet by 2019 if the program of OneWeb goes without any hassles. Right friends, I hope you enjoyed today's news analysis and features. Please do join for questions and answers session. Have a nice day. Thank you.